Going into this new Teen Titans The Judas Contract movie, I had a lot of reservations going into it, primarily because the previous film, Justice League vs. Teen Titans, was very average in my opinion, and not average where it could have been saved, but average where it was teetering on not good and just did a little enough in order to push itself into the average range. The trailer, which we got back in January, I believe, didn't really fill me with confidence. With that movie and the trailer that we got for the Judas Contract back in January going hand in hand, I was pretty concerned, primarily because that the original story that this movie is based of, the 1984 classic, which many consider to be a linchpin in the Teen Titans back catalogue, there was going to be some very noticeable differences which were very present in this movie, i.e. the lack of Wonder Woman, the lack of Cyborg, the seemingly lack of Jericho, the lack of Jericho's mother, Adelaine Kane, I think it is. It was obvious that the team was going to be different, a few characters were going to be different, we wasn't going to have the Robin transition into Nightwing. So not only were there some major story differences, but also personally, a lot of other little bits and pieces as well didn't quite settle with me, i.e. a small one for me personally. The voice actor for Brother Blood didn't really fill me with any confidence. But for a few weeks leading into the movie, we got some exclusive clips, and it did kind of ease me, but just a little bit. We got the opening sequence that was going to be to the film, which I actually thought was quite nice. We also got a little exclusive clip of Starfire training, which was pretty short and really didn't do much for me. But overall, I was quite curious going into this film. And whilst I will admit that this isn't a faithful adaptation by any stretch of the imagination, and if you're a hardcore traditionalist, you are probably going to hate this film because it is not directly from the original. In my personal opinion, and it is just my personal opinion, I think that this film did enough where I could honestly say that not only is this better than Justice League versus the Teen Titans, I actually think that this is perhaps one of the better animations that DC has done. I won't say that this film is perfect, because it isn't perfect. There are some elements to this film that I didn't like, some nitpicky points, but other bits that I think are more justifiable in my reasoning, but I'll get into that in a little bit. I will say beforehand that there isn't going to be many spoilers here. I'm not going to go through the entire film. It's not going to be completely detailed. It's basically going to be my thoughts on what I liked and what I disliked. There are going to be some little spoilers about the story here and there, but nothing all that major. The one thing that immediately struck me whilst I finished watching the film the first time round, as well as watching it a second time round in order to gain a couple of notes, is that they do actually strengthen certain characters out, and they do flesh them out a lot better than what they may have done in previous films, and especially the last one. One of the most notable ones is the relationship shared between Nightwing and Starfire. In previous films, they have been quite sketchy and they've not really been thought out or fleshed out all that well. But in this film, the interaction between the two is given more room to breathe. And I think there were plenty of moments in here which were actually quite funny and humorous. And I thought that the characters interacted with each other very well. I think Starfire's character in this one is fleshed out a little more. In the previous film, she was sort of a motherly sort of character. But in this one, the writers actually did give her a little bit more depth. She kind of questions her own leadership in compared to Nightwing, who's a lot more involved with the team in this film than he was in the previous movie. Of course, Nightwing was the one who originally put the team together, and Starfire took over, and she is kind of concerned that the fact that the other members may not be as recipient to her leadership as they were to Nightwing's, which I thought was nice. It showed a bit more of a human side to her that I thought was nice. But Nightwing, my God, did they strike the nail on the head with this guy. in previous films, he's not really been treated all that well, and especially in the last film, which he was kind of shat on all over, to be completely honest. But here, his character is given so much more development. You know, more screen time is given to him, and he, like I say, he is treated with a lot more respect in this movie. But if Nightwing was treated with a lot more dignity, then take that and amplify it by 10 in terms of Blue Beetle, because where that guy was seriously mistreated in the last film, and the writers clearly didn't know what to do with him, and he was there as a spare part. His character is fleshed out so much more in this film. We get a little bit more detail into his relationship with his family, which I thought was very good. The relationship he has with the Scarab in trying to get more control over it, because it is still a bit chaotic every now and then. And as well, he does get a few humorous moments in a particular scene where, in order to get more control of the Scarab, he believes that having more interaction with people on a day-to-day basis will calm it down. So he volunteers at a homeless shelter that gives food out to homeless people, in which he becomes friends with one of the ladies who works down there. I mean, clearly that's a bit of a desperate attempt in order to try and, you know, potentially have a romantic link in there, which does kind of feel pretty forced, but it does lead to a bit of a humorous moment, which I do kind of like. If the Scarab feels that Jaime's heart rate is increasing, then it thinks that there's danger ahead. So when it starts playing up, there is the scene where he has to sort of go into a back room to try and get control of it. Because Tracy, the lady who he's romantically linked with, if you can use in the loosest possible terms, hears a noise that is the Scarab, and she's wondering what it is. So she clearly doesn't know that he is the Blue Beetle, which I do have to question. In the earliest scene where they went into the homeless shelter, he is there with Terra and Beast Boy. Do you not think that alarm bells will be going off in her head, like, this guy is hanging out with someone who's green? Who's the only green person I know? Oh, wait a second, Beast Boy. Two together, maybe? But I don't know. But I do enjoy the bits where he interacts with his family, as well as the frustration he has in the Scarab's apparent dislike towards his father. It's very brief. It's about a minute and a half long, but I think in that very brief moment, it does kind of it does paint the picture very well. Beast Boy as well, I think, is treated a lot better. He's a lot more humorous in this film. He's a lot less arrogant, cocky, and self-assured. They didn't kind of know what to do with him in the last film, so they turned him into a cocky, arrogant git, into this sort of like social media crazed teenager, which again is kind of going around the houses. They don't actually have his character down to a T, in my opinion, but like I say, he is handled a lot better in this film. They do establish the relationship between him and Terra very, very briefly. He does have this sort of self-assured arrogance of him trying to woo her and she's not having any of it, but then later on they do share a kiss. I do think that was kind of rushed and out of the blue, and that's one thing that I did kind of note about this film. This film is only 84 minutes long, including credits and whatnot, and for me, I actually could have done with this film either being longer or potentially being broken up into two separate movies, because there's a lot here that does feel like it's rushed due to, you know, budgetary constraints and time constraints in order to get this film out when it was intended to. And they do sacrifice a lot on sort of like building the relationships together, as well as building up the story and getting a little bit more into Terra's character, which is told in flashbacks where her relationship with Deathstroke actually begun. Where she was a child, her powers were becoming more prominent, and the environment that she grew up in branded her a witch and was basically going to kill her before she was saved by Deathstroke. Their relationship in this film, as you know from the comic, it is implied that those two were romantically linked, which was then crystallized in issues later down the line. That relationship as well, it is hinted at that there is sort of a romantic aura going on, but it's not to the point where these two were linked in any way sexual. It is obviously made clear that Terra does harbour feelings for Deathstroke, you know, and he's promised her that when this contract is over, that the two are going to be together. I think that part was handled particularly tastefully, and I give credit for the writers in doing so. As far as Damien goes, he's had a lot of exposure in previous films, and this one, that's sort of tempered down a bit, and I like the fact that the writers didn't put all the focus on Damien as they have in previous movies. In fact, he gets taken out pretty much after the first third of the film, and we don't see him again until like the last 25 minutes where it builds to the climax. And I've got to admit, seeing him getting pummeled to fuck by Deathstroke was actually quite entertaining. His character, again, it sort of bounces back and forth with Damien, because, you know, in the previous films, he is this very hardened, very sort of assured, very hard, very emotionless person, and you do see him soften a little bit, especially in the previous film. This one, he kind of goes back full circle, because he goes back to sort of being this hardened person where, you know, the development is kind of all over the place. It's only when you get to the very end of the film where you see him kind of soften up again, and it's like, you can't really follow a simple progression. It goes, the writers make some headway, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're back to square one again. As I said before, Bluebeard shat on in the previous film, but this one he's treated with a lot more dignity. Raven in this one, it kind of gets the Blue Beetle treatment back in the first film. I actually tried to make note of this. She doesn't have more than a minute worth of script time in this film. In fact, I would be amazed if she had even 40 seconds worth of dialogue in this. So her character is really pushed into the background. She is a bit of a bit player, but I do admit, I think that because her character was focused on so heavily in the last film, I think that was kind of to be expected. She doesn't really do anything in this movie as well. She kind of comes into play at the very end, at the climax, where you've got the huge battle, which I'm not going to spoil in case you haven't seen the film. Also, going back to the time constraints that this film has, the scene where all the Titans get captured, again, it is changed as well. It isn't faithful to the original, but the way Raven is captured is that she is confronted by Terra, and she basically pummels the fuck out of Raven, and we don't see it. All we see is the aftermath, where the tower is basically wrecked with all these rocks, jagged rocks sticking out of the building, and that could have made for a really, really great battle, and a really great sequence, but we don't get it. And if the relationship between the two, it is hinted at that, you know, Terra doesn't find Raven all that appealing because she is a bit creepy, and Raven senses there's an aura about Terra that she's not quite sure what it is, but again, it's not given any room to breathe. It's like very few words, and then boom, and that happens like 3 times throughout the movie. I've got to say, story writing here, this is where the script kind of falters. In fact, the script falters in some parts where it really does frustrate me, and this could be seen as nitpicky, but I want you to think about this. When the Titans get captured, they get captured in various ways. Jaime is captured in the same way that Cyborg was in the previous comics, where his chair is electrified and he gets knocked out by Deathstroke. But the thing is he gets knocked out at the homeless shelter that he is volunteering at. There's wires travelling from an open door all the way along the floor to the bottom of the chair. You're telling me that Jaime didn't see that? You're telling me that he was so wrapped up in his own thoughts that he didn't see that? I don't know what a lot of people say. Oh, Hannibal, he was on the phone at the time and then he was reading the paper. I'm sorry, but if I'm in a room on my own, and even if I'm speaking on the phone, I'm going to notice some huge ass fucking wires travelling to a chair, and I'm going to be like, what the fuck's going on there? Beast Boy is captured when he is tricked into attending a Comic-Con to be a part of a podcast, and he sat at a table where there's a button on the table saying, do not press. So naturally, the fucking idiot presses the button and he gets tranquilized. And again, consistency here. There's 3 holes in the microphone, and boom, he gets hit with 2, and 1 ends up in the wall behind him, and that's how Nightwing discovers that how Beast Boy got captured, because he's the one who discovers how all of them gets captured in the end. How does that make sense? And plus, those darts, he gets hit with them and he falls straight back. You know, those are some pretty strong ass fucking darts. And also, so what? So did 2 shoot out and then 1, you know, was late on arrival? I don't get that. Starfire's way of getting captured happens off screen as well. And to set this up, her and Nightwing are living in an apartment just outside from the tower. A package gets dropped on the doorstep. She picks it up. It reads to Corey from Dick. So, of course, you think that, well, you don't think, but she thinks that the parcel is for Dick. And then when he discovers that she's been captured, the same note has a chunk missing out of it. So, what happened there? Was there like an explosive in the package? Was there a tranquilizer outside? Was there a gun in there? What happened? You know, this, you can't really, it's kind of tough to decipher. Nightwing doesn't get captured though. No, instead there is this really good fight sequence between him and Deathstroke, which ultimately leads to him being shot and faking the audience out in thinking that he's dead, when in actuality the bullet is stopped by a chopping board. The chopping board is about 1 inch thick. Now, I'm no scientist in any way, shape or form, and my science knowledge is very limited, but I don't think a bullet is going to be stopped by 1 inch thick chopping board. Just saying. Also, there's no scene where, you know, he slips the chopping board down his jacket. We don't see it happening. We think it's like off screen somewhere. I can only assume that happens, but how do you, when you're in the middle of a fight with somebody and you're getting your ass kicked, just get a chopping board and just shove it down your jacket and it hold there? Oh god, I've just remembered something else. Going back to shooting. God, the enemies in this film, they can't shoot worth a shit. I mean, I know it's a typical movie cliche where the enemy's firing at the heroes and they miss every fucking time, but literally, there are some moments where the Titans are standing completely stone still. They are not moving in the slightest. The enemies coming along, they're firing like fuck. Like, there could be like 5 bad guys, and they're shooting at these fuckers. They miss every single time. It's fucking unbelievable. Even Deathstroke misses Nightwing. Misses 2 shots in the fucker. And this is obviously covered in the trailer. This isn't a fucking secret. But if someone is running in a straight line away from you and you've got like a high power pistol, you're not missing the fucker. Unless you're fucking doing that, you are not missing shit. This pissed me off as well. Very early on, the Titans infiltrate a hive base where they're transferring parts of a machine that basically saps the energy and the life out of the mutants in this, or humans, in order for Brother Blood, who is also one of the main villains in this, in order to strengthen him so he can become like a god. And there's a scene where they're battling these mechas, and they're hidden. They've got cover. This is also seen in one of the exclusive clips. And then it cuts forward to the next scene, and all of a sudden, all the Titans, bar Starfire and Nightwing, they've gone from cover to just being out in the open. Like, there's no clear transition. It's not like they sort of like Nightwing and Starfire do their attack and then they sort of like do like a run around. Not like that. No. They're behind cover, and then boom, they are completely exposed, and they don't get shot out once. Little things like that really fucking annoy me. Oh, and also, as well, one thing that did annoy me as well, there's a training scene where Beast Boy and Terra are just battling in as a training session, and during the training, in the comics, where Terra almost brings Beast Boy to death is when he's he's being playful with her and she fucking murks his ass. Well, in here, whilst they're training, she has a flashback which then triggers a meltdown, and I have to be honest, the payoff is pretty poor. You know, maybe this comes down to time constraints, but all she does is causes a cyclone and whips Beast Boy away, and all of a sudden she's about to fucking wail on his ass before she gets stopped. If this movie was longer, I would have liked it to have gone a bit heavier. But that's not to say that this movie is light in any way. You know, in America it's been rated a PG-13. I don't know what it'll be rated in the UK. Probably a 12A if I'm guessing. But this movie doesn't hold back in any way. There's swearing left, right, and centre. There's no F-bombs, but there are about 2 or 3 occasions where the word shit gets dropped, and there's straight up murders, headshots, there's blood. I have to actually give the writers credit, and I give the production team credit for going a little darker and actually pushing a boundary a little bit. And I'd actually like to see this go. I'd actually like to see them continue with this, because treating this as a bit more of an adult film rather than just another animation for a younger audience, I actually give respect to the production team for that, and I think they should keep going for that, in my opinion. Now, as I said before, if you're a hardcore traditionalist, you're not going to like this film, I don't think, because there are many moments that are included in the comics that are not included in the film. And there are many plot elements in the comics that don't appear in this film. Like, for instance, of course, Cyborg and Wonder Woman aren't in it. We're not introduced to Adelaide Kane. Jericho, whilst he is in this film, his part is not actually made well known that it's actually Jericho, but only those that really know the character design will be able to tell that the person in like the first 15 minutes of the film who gets like 3 seconds on screen to the person that is shown in the post-credit sequence is actually Jericho. Also in this film, Brother Blood is the one who is contracted Deathstroke in order to capture the Titans, which his motivations are to harness their powers through this machine in order to elevate him to this like leviathan of a creature, this all-powerful creature that will basically be considered like a demigod on Earth. Which I have to say, the overall design for the Beast is actually pretty good, and I think it's really, really imaginative. Terra's character in this is very different. In the comics, she is this very psychopathic, unhinged, mentally unstable person who is full of vitriol and hatred towards the Titans. In this film, her character is softened a bit. She's basically like an undercover agent who starts to kind of like the group that she's with, and of course there is that obvious bit of conflict as well as to where her loyalties lie, but ultimately she does side with Deathstroke before. Okay, basically what happens is that there's a scene where this power sapping machine needs all 6 Titans in order for it to work, but because Nightwing isn't there, they need a 6th member. So Deathstroke agrees for Brother Bud to use Terra in order to extract the powers, which, you know, naturally she's pissed off about, which I was watching and I kind of thought to myself, sweetheart, $200 million this guy's getting paid, fuck it, I'd give you up. But anyway, once they all get freed, thanks to Nightwing, Terra goes absolutely berserk on Deathstroke and fucking murks his ass. Also, that's another thing that I noticed. Character design inconsistencies. In the post-credit sequence to the previous film, we had Terra with sort of like longish, shoulder-length sort of blonde hair, no freckles. In this film, her hair has been cut a bit, but there are freckles. And then when she reveals herself to the Titans that she double crossed them, they've sort of given this like 80s, 90s sort of punk rock chick look where she's got like shaved sides and she's got like earrings going all down one ear and like black lipstick. It's like, who was on drugs when they designed that? Because that was poor. That was an awful choice. But apart from that, that's probably the only real issue that I have with character design. The ending of the film is actually quite subtle, and I do like that. It basically ends with this sort of like very touching monologue where Beast Boy talks to Kevin Smith, who plays himself in this film. I have no idea who he is. Some of you out there may do. And he's talking about, you know, being a Titan and also being a part of a family. He also gives a nice touching sort of like eulogy-esque sort of speech about Terra, where it is revealed in this last part that Terra's obviously died after the temple that they're in at the time collapses on them and she gets buried alive, in which there's a flashback where, you know, Beast Boy is uncovering dirt and finds Terra and holds her as she dies, which is kind of touching, even though I personally would have been like walked up to her and said, you know, this bitch betrayed us, fucking rotten shit bitch. But that's just the kind of person I am, fucking heartless. And in this little moment, we see that there's a new addition to the team in the form of Wonder Girl, which, you know, who knows where that's going to lead. I don't know if that's Donna, because I think in these films, Rosario Dawson voices Wonder Woman, who I think is Diana. So I don't know. This could be Donna Troy. This could perhaps be Cassie Sandsmark. I'm not too sure. But like I said, the ending sequence is quite sweet. One thing actually, I did actually remember this, and I'm sorry I'm kind of jumping all over the place now because I want to get this finished. The relationship, because I know a lot of people were concerned about this because they built heavily on the Damian Wayne Raven relationship in the previous film. That's actually not really covered all that much. It's only really kind of hinted at near the end where they're both standing on the tower, and then, you know, Raven's got something underneath her cloak and she reveals it, and she's got like a puppy under there. I don't know why. Maybe I'd give her something to do because she's done nothing at all in this film. So yeah, God knows where that's going. And yeah, and as I said, we have the post-credit sequence where it goes back to the temple crumbling, and the dead body of Jericho is lying there, which, again, I have to fucking nitpick like mad. He was the original test subject when testing the power-sucking machine. And once they found that it worked, he was basically disposed of with a bullet straight to the head. And so what they must have done is someone must have picked up his body and dragged it 3 feet and just dropped it there. That doesn't no, is it just me? Alright, that's just me. During this post-credit sequence, we have a little bit of dialogue from Brother Blood from a previous section of the film that is covered in the trailer, where he says, I talk to the dead, for no matter how rotten the corpse, there's always a tiny fragment of life. And it focuses on Jericho's body, and the bullet wound sort of like sinks away and he opens his eyes. So I don't know where this is going to lead to for a third film, if there is going to be a third film. I actually do kind of hope that this film does well, because I did quite like it, and the more I think about it, whilst yes, it's not a faithful adaptation, I don't think it's a terrible adaptation. I think that the writers did enough justice, and they did actually do some good work in this film, and personally I did quite like it, and I would recommend. And really there's nothing left to say. I think the last thing to do is to just talk about the voice acting, which overall I thought was good. Nothing really much, you know, pretty much the whole cast was there. Miguel Ferreira did a fantastic job voicing Deathstroke. Again, I wasn't too keen on Brother Blood's voicing. I think you could have got somebody different for that. The woman who voiced Mother Mayhem, who's sort of like the lover of Brother Blood, voiced by a woman called Meg Foster. Whoa, that voice is sexy, I've got to admit. The scenes where she's basically offering people and saying, your service is here, I've come to an end, and it's just basically killing off henchmen just left, right and centre. Oh God, that makes me hard. That voice is so sexy. It's very sort of, it's cold and it's dark and it's very unemotional, but it works brilliantly. And also, I have to give massive props to Christina Ricci, who went out. She actually did a really good job. Her voice acting was fine throughout, and then when it gets to the scene where Terra basically has a huge fucking meltdown and causes the temple that they're in to collapse, my God, she can scream her ass off, that woman. Props to her. I don't think a lot of voice actors really do it that much, where they kind of imagine themselves in that moment and just like, okay, get yourself into the mindset of this character and just go fucking all out. She did a perfect job here, to the point where I honestly would like to hear more voice acting from Christina Ricci, because I don't think she's done a lot, but she proved in here. She's got chops, that woman. I thought she did a great job, and it's actually kind of a shame that we're not going to hear anything any more from her from this from the DC universe, unless, of course, you know, they include her in for like flashback moments to sort of kind of shoehorn the Terror character in, and, you know, make links, and you know what I'm talking about. So overall, what do I think? Would I recommend this film? You know what? If you're curious, check it out. You can download it if you want. If you don't, if you're not sure, find out somebody who's downloaded it, watch it with them, make your opinion. Again, if you're a hardcore traditionalist, you're probably not going to like the film. But overall, I actually didn't think it was that bad. I liked it. Would I watch it again if I'm bored? Yes. As far as a score goes, I'd personally give it a solid 7, maybe a light 8. I think it's one of the better DC animated movies that there have been out so far. And that's really nothing else to say. I apologise if this was very rambling and very long. Again, I've never done one of these sort of videos, and it's probably going to come off as very amateurish. It's probably the only time I'm ever going to do this sort of video. But if you'd like to leave your opinions in the comments section as to whether or not you like the film, whether you hated the film, if you agree with my opinions, if you disagree with them, what you liked or hated about the film, all comments are welcome. But until next time, I'm still that song review guy, and take care.